but I know we've had folks joining throughout. So just a quick reminder, the Massachusetts Governor's Council is composed of 8 individuals elected from districts, as Jonathan went over at the top, each consisting of 5 state Senate districts. It's larger than a congressional district. These are big districts. The council is responsible for confirming judges and members of the parole board, among other nominees, for approving pardons and commutations. If you care about the present, the future of courts in Massachusetts, this is a big one. You should absolutely care about the Governor's Council. I'm really excited to close out tonight's forum with another of these conversations. We are just waiting for some technical things to be figured out, it looks like. So I'm going to quickly review, and sorry for those who have been with us from the
I've lost it again. I don't see. Oh, okay.
I'm going to quickly review.
I can't hear. That's the problem. I'm trying to, but I can't. Is there any way that you can do anything about that?
So it sounds like one of our candidates is having trouble hearing. I don't know. I'm gonna move.
Do that.
Let's see.
I don't have any volume at all. I don't have any sound.
Sorry, everybody. I don't want to go over our ground rules if one of our candidates can't hear them. So let's give it just a second.
I'm on the phone, but I'm watching. Yeah.
Yep. But Marilyn, sorry to confirm, you're not able to hear me right now? This is a technical issue that is above my pay grade. Sorry, folks. Give us just 1 second here to figure this out.
Down on the very bottom left, if you roll your cursor over there,
Yeah.
you should see something that says start video.
No. Oh, wait a minute. Start my video. Okay. All right. I did it.
Okay. We've
I
got
have no sound though.
Oh.
Marilyn, are you able to hear us?
Marilyn, could you try calling in on a different device than you use for video? That you're on kind of current, that we can see you, but if you...
Okay. So I think what we'll do, and any member of the planning committee, cut me off if this is not what we should do, but I'm going to quickly introduce our candidates, since Marilyn doesn't need to hear that. She knows who she is. And then I'll get started on our ground rules. And if necessary, we'll start with a couple of questions for Mara, and then we'll just roll with it. But want to be respectful of everybody's time as it's getting late. So we are joined by 2 candidates for Governor's Council District 3 tonight. The first is Marilyn.
I can't hear anything.
Marilyn is the incumbent governor of District 3.
Let me get this phone. I'm talking to you.
And then our second candidate is Mara Dolan. Mara is a public defender who has worked in our juvenile district and superior courts all across Massachusetts for 17 years. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you so much.
A reminder of our ground rules. We'll have a minute for each question. If there is a follow-up question, which probably won't have time for, but might ask them, you'll have 30 seconds to respond to those. And then there's the opportunity to offer a rebuttal if you're mentioned by name in the other candidate's response. You can request that. If granted, you'll have 30 seconds. I think we will have Mara ask you to start with your opening statement and then continue.
Thank you so much to everyone, to Boston Wards 4, 5, 10, 11, and 19 for having such a comprehensive forum tonight. These are really consequential offices, and I thank you all for giving them so much attention. If you're joining to learn about the Governor's Council for the first time, I thank you tremendously for doing your part. If you care who our judges are, and I know that you do, you need to care who your Governor's Councillor is. The Governor's Council confirms our judges, parole board members, and
Hello?
commutations among its other duties. As Molly told you,
I can't,
I'm a public defender, and I've worked for 17 years across Massachusetts in our juvenile, our district,
but it's
and our
still
superior
not.
courts. My clients are among our most vulnerable and therefore the most impacted by the decisions of the Governor's Council. But all of us are. When I was in law school over 20 years ago, I remember one of my professors saying that our courts are about 20 years behind the times. Based on what I see in my work as a public defender, we're even farther behind than that. The answer lies in the Governor's Council, and that's why I'm running. I hope to earn your support tonight. My name is Mara Dolan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mara. I think we will just continue with questions, and then hopefully we will have Marilyn able to join us shortly, and we'll backfill if necessary. So, okay, Mara, we got a bit of this in your opening statement, but would love to hear why you're running for Governor's Council and what it is about this office in particular that appeals to you.
Well, I'm running because I'm a public defender and I know how much judges matter. And I know that no matter how
Yes.
much I do for my clients, I am limited if the judge they
No.
appear before does
No,
not
yes, you
understand the
need-
things that they
No.
need to understand. This is a little distracting. Could she perhaps be muted while I'm giving an answer?
We're trying. It looks like it
Okay.
keeps unmuting.
Okay. Okay. So there are a number of issues that I see in our courts that concern me tremendously. The first is how we treat people with a substance use disorder. Far too often, in fact, most of the time, people for whom staying drug and or alcohol free is a condition of their release, who relapse, because that's what happens as part of recovery, are taken into custody. They are sent to prison. It's wrong, it's expensive, and it doesn't work. Addiction is a chronic relapsing brain condition that does not respond to negative consequences. The science is very clear that incarcerating people is actually the worst thing that we can do. So as your Governor's Counselor, I'll make sure that all nominees understand the science of addiction and know how to work to support recovery.
Thank you. You talked a bit about your experience as a public defender. Would love to get into specifics. What is it about that experience or others that you might have had that prepares you to serve in this role specifically?
Well, it is personal and professional to me. From a personal perspective, I've been supporting myself since I was 18. I came to Boston when I was 18. I didn't even have a high school diploma. I got a GED, which is great because I have clients who either have GEDs or they're working for GEDs, and it's very powerful to be able to say, hey, I have a GED, and they see what I've been able to do with that. I know what it's like to struggle and to not have the support that you need. So I'm keenly aware of many of the issues that my clients face. And I see that our criminal justice system at its best can actually support people and help them to get their lives back on track, which is what they want. But at its worst, it is overly punitive and makes things worse. That is not reflective of the values of the people of this district. And we need to fix that, and we can do it through the Governor's Council.
Thank you. And it sounds like maybe, Marilyn, you're able to hear us now. Is that the case, Marilyn? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, we will continue on then. Mara, we asked this question in the last segment, or I'm sorry, in the first Governor's Council segment, thinking both as a candidate for this office, but also somebody who has likely voted in previous Governor's Council races. What traits do you see as most important in a member of the Governor's Council?
I think understanding what's happening in our courts is critical. Having worked in them for 17 years, I understand issues that are playing out there that folks who haven't had that opportunity don't see. I see the racial disparity. I see the data that tells us that we are below the national average on racial inequities, and I see that playing out every day. I see the need for disability justice. And I was speaking earlier about substance use disorder and addiction. That's a disability justice issue as well. 15% of our general population has a disability, but in Massachusetts prisons, it's 40%. There is clearly a huge disconnect there. The disconnect lies with our judges and therefore with our governor's counselors. As your governor's counselor, I'll make sure that judges understand disability issues and judge people accordingly.
Thank you. Again, sorry, it sounds like we think Marilyn might have volume now. Marilyn, if you're able to hear me, we're just asking that you unmute or give maybe a thumbs up. We'll continue unless Marilyn we hear otherwise.
Plenty to talk about. I'm glad to go on. I can give you 2-minute, 5-minute answers, whatever you want.
Thank you. Thanks for being so accommodating, and thanks everybody for bearing with us. We all know the Zoom struggles. Okay, so this is the tough one to answer in 1 minute. But Mara, what factors would you consider when determining whether an individual should be confirmed as a judge, a member of the parole board, or a member of any of the other boards that and positions considered by the council? How much weight or importance would you give to each of those factors you'd consider? And then are there any litmus tests that you would implement?
Sure. I do have litmus tests. As I've just said, they need to understand the science of addiction and know how to work to support recovery. They need to understand disability issues. They must be anti-racist. They must be ready, willing, and able to recognize our systemic racism and use every tool that the law provides in order to stop it. They must be completely pro-choice. Massachusetts judges have been making decisions involving cases on abortion for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they will continue to do that. The big difference between myself and my opponent, who voted to confirm an anti-choice judge to our superior courts just weeks after Roe versus Wade was overturned. I will absolutely never do that. Now, the makeup of the parole board is determined by statute. It's Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 27, Section 4, I believe. And it specifies the background that parole board members have to have. So certainly we need to comply with the statute. But we've got to have diversity of perspective. We need people from different backgrounds, people who are sensitive to the issues of the people who will appear before them, the ones that I've just discussed. And also, we need to have folks who recognize that if someone does not pose a danger, and that is the most important consideration. I'm a public defender. I'm not naive. There are people out there who do pose a danger, and they should not be they should be behind bars. But if they don't pose a danger and they're in a position to get out of prison, to lead the life that they want to lead, to lead the life they want to live, they have a home, they have a community, they can build a community, they can get work, they can be supported, and they have the supports they need, then we should be letting more of them out. And frankly, there's a lot of talk about pardons, and I'm all in favor of pardons. I think they're great when they're appropriate, but no.
Thank you. So, I certainly know that we have some of the answer to this question, but would love to ask directly what issues, either that you've already touched on or that you haven't had a chance to speak about, would you prioritize during questioning and confirmation hearings? Oh, and Mara, sorry, you're still muted.
Thank you. Character and temperament are incredibly important. I see judges yelling all the time. They yell at attorneys, they yell at defendants, they yell at court officers. It's wrong. We're supposed to be providing an opportunity. This is supposed to be a civil process, and we are supposed to be modeling adult behavior. So when a judge yells, when a judge does not have judicial temperament, it is profoundly damaging. I've seen judges do it in juvenile court. I've seen judges make children cry in juvenile court. So I would say, other than the things that I've already talked about, judicial temperament is incredibly important. And the way you find out whether someone has a judicial temperament is not by asking them, because of course they'll tell you that they do. You need to do a thorough enough investigation, talk to the people they've worked with, talk about what kind of a colleague they are, and really find out and make sure.
What role does the Governor's Council play in, or should the Governor's Council play in both helping to end mass incarceration in Massachusetts and in advancing justice for working people in the state?
Well, mass incarceration is not something that happens, in a cloud somewhere. It's judges who are making these decisions, except for the decision on which crime someone is charged with, which is a decision that's made by district attorneys. Every other decision is made by judges. It's bail. It's whether someone is released on bail. It's whether they're released on personal recognizance. It's whether they're released on bail with conditions. It's sentencing. It's probation. It's terms of probation. It's whether they're found to be in violation of their probation or their parole. Those are the decisions that make up mass incarceration. So we've got to make sure that our judges have the right insights into human beings and into character, into the circumstances of the defendants who appear before them, so that they hand out the right sentences. Now, sentences are legislative as well. So we need someone who can work with the legislature to make sure that sentences are more appropriate. I haven't just been a public defender. I've done a lot of political communications work. I was the Senate President's Communications Director. I was the press secretary for the Secretary of State. I was communications advisor to Ed Markey's campaign. And I will use those skills, coupled with the platform of the Governor's Council, to advocate for those issues.
Thank you. And I just want to draw attention to Jonathan's note in the chat. We're just going to do this sequentially, so I'll continue the conversation with Mara. Then if we are able to make the technology work, we'll go on to a series of questions for Marilyn Devaney. I also want to note that we're about 20 minutes into this segment, but since I've wasted a lot of time talking about our technical difficulties, we're going to give it a few more minutes, if that's okay with you, Mara.
No, you've done a great job.
Perfect. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the criminal legal side of things. I want to switch gears to the civil system for just a moment here. As a future member of the Governor's Council, what do you see as your role in considering a judicial nominee's potential to reduce or eliminate the rights of civil litigants?
Well, I think rights are incredibly important. I mean, my life's work is upholding people's rights. So I would absolutely want to make sure that all nominees will do that. We're certainly seeing in the federal courts a really troubling and dangerous erosion of rights. So we've got to make sure that our state courts uphold them.
Thank you. So advance warning, this is a long lead into this question. Recent study that my organization, the People's Parity Project, did found that of 114 sitting judges that were surveyed in Massachusetts, nearly half are former corporate lawyers. Only 11 of the 114 specialized in representing injured workers and consumers while they were in practice. Only 2% worked at legal aid organizations that help poor people dealing with civil matters. All 7 current members of the state's highest court worked as lawyers defending corporate interests. And the disparity is even more glaring on the criminal side. 60% of Massachusetts judges are former prosecutors. Only 3% have worked as public defenders, representing people, as you know, accused of committing crimes who couldn't afford lawyers. What do you think causes these disparities? And if you were to be on the Governor's Council, how would you think about the recruitment of demographically and professionally diverse candidates to apply for positions that are under the purview of the Governor's Council?
It's a terrible problem. We have never had a public defender on the Governor's Council. That's one of the reasons I'm running. Since the Supreme Court established the right to counsel for people who couldn't afford to hire one in 1963, we've had 52 governor's counselors, but not a single one has been a full-time public defender. We have to have a voice to provide greater balance. And it is really troubling to hear those numbers. I had numbers from 2 years ago. Things have not gotten as much better as they need to. One of the issues that I have with former prosecutors being attorneys is that if you're a prosecutor, you never have a conversation with a defendant, not once. You never get to hear what their lives are like, what they think about, what their concerns are, what the circumstances were when they committed the offense with which they were charged. As a defense attorney, I do. The lawyer-attorney relationship, I mean, the attorney-client relationship is the most protected by our law. My clients can tell me anything and I cannot disclose it. So I know a lot about what their lives are like. A prosecutor never has the opportunity to do that. And if someone has only been a corporate attorney, they are not living close to the pain, as they say. That's one of the things that I will bring. I have personally lived it, but I've also worked with a lot of people who lived it. As governor's counselor, you don't just vet and vote on the nomination. You also have a conversation. And as your governor's counselor, I will have those conversations with the nominees to help them understand the things that I understand and the things that I've seen in my 17 years as a public defender.
Thank you. I'm going to turn now to our final question, which kind of circles back to where we started, which is just the fact that lots of folks are unaware about the existence of the governor's counselor and what its role is. How would you seek to increase transparency and the public's ability to engage with the council if elected?
Well, that's why I was thanking you all for doing this. I mean, a lot of my campaign is simply educating people about the Governor's Council. And one of the great things about that is when you tell people what the Governor's Council do, they all say, wow, that's really important. So more and more people know what it is, and that's great. So I encourage everyone to tell people this is really important. And you can condense it. If you care who our judges are, you need to care who your governor's counselor is. I do a lot right now. As I've told you, I've done a lot of political communications work, but I've done a lot in this campaign to help educate people. I've done a lot on social media. I publicized this forum on social media. I sent it out to all of my people on my email list. I will continue to do that. Now, my opponent does not do that. I think that's a real strength that I have. I know how to use a platform and to amplify things so that folks know. And I'll do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Again, thanks for rolling with some changes to the plan. Really appreciate you having this conversation with us tonight. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to now see, I don't know if anybody has an update or Councillor Devaney, if you're able to hear me. I think we might be good to go. We're just going to ask you to unmute if you're able to hear this. Okay, good. We are rolling. Welcome to Councillor Marilyn Devaney of Governor's Council District 3. Councillor, I'm going to hand it over to you for your 1-minute opening statement.
Pardon me?
I'll hand it to you for an opening statement.
Okay, I have to tell you, I haven't heard one word that he said. I'm having a lot of problems here. So even now while I'm talking, my voice is coming back again. Can I do something about that? Because
I am not sure. I know Jonathan was working with you. Can you hear my questions when I ask them?
okay. I'll do my best. But what I'm saying is that every word we say is coming back, repeated back to me. You know what I mean? It's like an echo.
Shoot. Well, yeah, let's just, if we can do our best, if you
All
want.
right. I'll try to do my best. It's too bad. I'm sorry.
Wonderful. In that case, then, yep, if you want to just provide a 1-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I ran for governor's council after seeing my friend beg a judge 8 occasions to keep her abusive boyfriend in jail. She had a restraining order. The judge told her, "You're wasting my time and you're wasting the court's time." A week later, my friend was murdered by her abusive boyfriend. I vowed to be a counselor who would bring justice to you and your families. I fought for reform and I succeeded. I successfully stopped judicial nominees from donating to the Governor's Council, governor, and lieutenant governor, right up to the hearing. My work resulted in an executive order banning this current practice from every governor. I fought successfully a live stream Governor's Council hearings. My extensive reform have been made the judiciary better, less biased, and more qualified. I support in this regard returning to hearings from the ACLU, Asperg, and other progressive organizations. I'm proud to fight against racial, gender, and sexual orientation. I go into prisons and I meet with Black inmates who are wrongly sentenced, and I'm working with commutations. And this governor is wonderful, and she's very supportive of that. I continue to advocate for pardons, and I was very pleased. I voted for the first time for people with possession of marijuana. That affected thousands of lives, and these are the things that I'm committed to. And I have met with every person, over 1,000, that have come through from the judge. It's important for me to know, not just go once a week into a hearing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'm asking people to support me, to keep me working for them. I'm the only full-time.
Thank you. And so you've talked a bit about this, but would love to offer a chance for you to share a bit more about what prepares you to serve in this capacity. To continue.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The sound is coming back. I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. What prepares you to continue to serve in this capacity?
Well, why I ran was because I didn't know what the Governor's Council was. I didn't know how a judge got his job. And my friend was in a very serious relationship, and it was getting very dangerous. She had a restraining order, and she had gone 8 times before the judge. And the judge said to her, all she wanted to do is put him in prison, put him in jail because he was really violent. She feared for her life. The judge said, "You have been wasting my time and wasting the court's time." And a few days later, my friend was murdered by her boyfriend. And so then I found out how the judge got his job, and I found out what the council does. And I looked at all of the things they do, and I said, I can do that. So I'm a reformer, and that's what I've been doing since I've been elected.
Thank you. Okay, multi-part question here, and it'll be a quick response, but what factors do you consider when determining whether an individual should be confirmed as a judge, a member of the parole board, or a member of any of the other boards and positions considered by the council?
Well,
how much weight? Sorry, a couple more parts to this. How much weight and importance do you give to each of the factors that you consider? And are there any litmus tests that you use?
Okay, for a judge, I want, first of all, to be competent and to be fair, to be experienced, and most of all, have compassion. And to talk about in fairness, and when I talk about industrial accident board, very important to me, because this is where injured workers go before a judge. And I want that judge to understand this injured worker is trying to put food on the table. So it's very, very important. And it hasn't ever been mentioned by my opponent. So those are things. In the appellate tax board, obviously, you want them to have that background. And in the parole board, absolutely, they have to believe in second chances. And I changed the parole board because when I first got elected, they were all prosecutors and police or former police officers, and paroles weren't coming through. And I looked at the statute, hadn't been in conformance for 30 years since Governor Dukakis, and it calls for differing professions going on. And so I went to the governor. I said, this is not in compliance. And every governor has tried to change it. And we now have a forensic psychologist, a social worker, and we have the the chair has been in the parole system for 37 years. So I'm very pleased with that. When the council voted on the phone to stop the hearings going out, I couldn't believe it. I was furious. At our public assembly with the lieutenant governor, I made a motion to restore it. I didn't get a second. And
It's
I could not believe I got support from the ACLU, the Mass
I
Purge.
think we are at
We got a bet.
time.
We got a
Thank
bet.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Nikki. Okay. So we, appreciate hearing about those various factors. Love to ask a bit about how you gauge that in confirmation hearings and what issues you prioritize during questioning in confirmation hearings.
Well, first of all, as I said, I've met with over 1,000, every nominee from parole board to judge. And it's very important. I meet 2 or 3 hours because I just don't want to come in and once a week and on a piece of paper and meet this person. And so I'm very investigative, and I do find out their background. I find out where they worked. I talk to people who know them. And are we talking about I'm talking about all of the boards and judge and clerk magistrate. Is that what you're asking too? Yeah, it's very important. And I will not put I will never vote for someone, for example, for the juvenile court if they haven't had a dedicated practice for juveniles. I mean, this is not just giving a robe to somebody. We have to have people that have been given their attorney's time in that particular aspect, whether it's juveniles or whether it's the district courts or superior court. They have to have the qualifications for that particular position.
Thank you. We've talked a lot over the course of the night about mass incarceration and the criminal legal system. What role do you see the Governor's Council playing in helping to end mass incarceration in Massachusetts?
Well, I don't know how others do it. I'm only going to talk for myself. I'm full-time. I'm a full-time counselor, which my opponent wouldn't be. So I have really looked into the racial discrimination in the court, and it is apparent, and no one can deny it. And I have been committed to meet inmates, Black inmates, because of racial discrimination, working for commutations, because some of them, it's so unfair, the sentencing they have gotten. So that's what I'm working on. And I've got a wonderful governor who supports me, and we're going to have more pardons and commutations. And I've been waiting 8 years for this. So that's where I'm really, dedicated myself to those people and to identify those people in prison so that we can release them, that they deserve.
Thank you. I want to note, given the changes that, since we're doing both of these conversations separately and didn't provide rebuttals during the first portion, we won't provide rebuttals now.
And I didn't hear anything from my opponent or anything. I've just got in now, so I'm so grateful that I get in.
We are glad we got it all to work out. And I'll just remind attendees to make sure you are muted. Thank you. Okay, turning to the civil legal system.
To the what?
To the civil legal system. As a current member of the Governor's Council, what do you see as your role in considering a judicial nominee's potential to reduce or eliminate the rights of civil litigants?
I don't quite understand that question. Would you repeat it?
Yeah, so thinking about the role that judges play in potentially reducing or eliminating civil litigants' rights, how do you think about that in your work on the Governor's Council?
Well, I think we've all said it and believe it. We need fairness in judges. And that's why I think I can be very fair. I don't have any conflict of interest. I'm not a lawyer who's going to be looking for my lawyer friends coming through. And I was particularly upset to learn that my opponent had gone to court and she accused 2 state troopers of racism, and there was no basis for it. And she refused to give any documents to the the opposing counsel because she didn't have it. And the judge was very angry, charged her, fined her $800 for this unfair. She had no evidence that there was any type of, anything wrong with these two police officers, that they had shown no bit of racism. She couldn't identify it, and she was sanctioned in the court. So I'm thinking, gee, do you want someone like that on the council who acts like that in court and was trying to get two state troopers convicted when they were perfectly innocent? I think that's something you have to think about.
I'm going to invite a response on that one from candidate Dolan, just given the direct nature of that claim.
And that was 2007. I have the documents right here. Okay. So this is me.
Yeah.
I investigate, and that's what you need on the council. You need someone to investigate.
And Councillor Devaney, that is your time, so I'm going to hand it over to candidate Dolan now.
Yeah, no, this is a completely false this is a false representation of what happened. I have documents that I can hold up too. No, this was a case where actually there were some folks who were falsely accused of something. The judge found no probable cause to believe that a crime was committed, and so they were interested in a civil suit. I absolutely did not do the things that she says that I did. This is really where her lack of legal experience is very much evident. She simply does not understand what happened.
Thank you for that response.
Yeah.
We are going to, for the sake of time, we're going to move on. We had our one rebuttal, so we'll move to our next question. And this is, okay, apologies for those who are listening, you'll hear our long lead-in for a second time. But the question is about professional and demographic diversity on the bench. So we know that there is a lack of professional diversity within the Massachusetts courts. Of 114 sitting judges, nearly half are former corporate lawyers. Only 11% have experience representing injured workers and consumers. Only 2% worked at legal aid. All 7 current members of the SJC have worked as lawyers defending corporate interests. And on the criminal side, 60% of Massachusetts judges are former prosecutors, with only 3% having worked as public defenders. Councillor Devaney, what do you think causes these disparities? And what is the role of the Governor's Council in attempting to recruit more demographically and professionally diverse candidates to become judges and serve on the various boards under the council's purview? And sorry, Councillor Devaney, you are muted. Councillor Devaney, we cannot hear you. Let me, if you could unmute.
Okay.
Yep, you're set.
Well, that's a very good question. And I do go in my district and talk to people. And I just recently, last week, had a forum, which was the largest group that they ever had to come. And it was how to become a judge and a clerk magistrate and other board members. And I had judges and a clerk magistrate and people from the governor's office, because this is an open administration. And we're getting people that are qualified, not political insiders. And it was wonderful, because I want people to come. I want them to know this is an open administration, and they have a chance. I would have never done it in the last administration. I mean, we have someone in the Westboro court, the judge and clerk magistrate were co-coaches for the Lieutenant Governor Polito. That's not what this is about. They were so pleased. Everyone came up to us afterwards and was so pleased, because we had everyone. We had from the Judicial Nominating Committee, and that's the person you send your application to. And it showed them the whole process. So I'm opening that up to people so that I want them to apply. This is an open administration. I'm over the moon. I can't be happier. We're getting people that are really qualified. And it was a wonderful night, and people were educated. And that's the kind of thing I do. I go out and try to educate.
I'm sorry, Councillor Devaney, we are at time on that question. For the sake of time, I'm just going to ask one final question. which is that many people continue to be unaware of the existence of the Governor's Council and of its role. How do you and would you, if reelected, seek to increase transparency and civic engagement with the council?
That's to me. Well, I'm going to tell you, the sad thing is that people don't know what the governor's council is. They ask me if I'm the governor's attorney. That's not the spelling, but anyway, council. But the point is that it is, to me, even if I never was on the council, it is the most important elected body. You know why? Because we are the only checks and balances for the governor. If the council votes no on that nominee, that person doesn't get that position. There's not another body that has that authority. But I got to tell you something. People think we have such authority, but because councilors went to prison 50 years ago for selling judgeships, a lot of our authority is taken away. So I want people to know we vote for all these boards and commissions, commutations and pardons, but guess what? We don't know who applies. We don't know how many. We have nothing to do with that process. We have one person before us to vote yes or no. So really, when you say, what is your job? It's to vote yes or no. But we don't have anyone working for us. So that's why it's important. I am your full-time and I am there. I go to the graduations. I'm out.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Devaney. Thank you to both of our candidates for District 3. Really appreciate the time tonight. I'm just going to, for the sake of fairness,
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Really want to thank everybody for being here tonight and for taking the time to learn about these offices, learn about our candidates, and think about the future of Massachusetts.